Commercial real estate relies on third-party brokers to bridge the gap between buyers and sellers. In these high-value transactions, trust is the primary currency. But when a single broker attempts to represent both sides, that trust is often structurally compromised. We begin with Lintros Nominees Proprietary Limited. As the vendor, their objective was straightforward: sell a specific set of strata titles within a commercial development. To achieve this, Lintros retained the services of an agency, John Hopkins & Company, to act as their representative in the market. Enter the second principal, King. He was a prospective purchaser, actively seeking objective, independent investment advice before committing capital. The conflict began when King hired that same firm, John Hopkins & Company, to provide the very investment advice he required. This created a triad where two unassociated principals held contradictory expectations for the same agent. The seller expected a high price. The buyer expected a critical, unbiased evaluation. While dual agency is not universally prohibited, it creates a volatile structural environment. To survive legal scrutiny, such an arrangement requires perfect, proactive transparency. During the transaction, the agent advised King that Lintros's strata titles were a sound investment, directly leading to a formal offer. The dispute centers on missing data. The agent never informed King they were already working for the recommended vendor. Relying on this purportedly independent advice, King finalized the purchase contract with Lintros. Upon discovering the agent's dual role, King immediately moved to abandon the contract, setting the stage for a landmark legal challenge. We will deconstruct the court's reasoning using the IRAC framework: issue, rule, application, and conclusion. The central legal issue is whether a principal has the right to rescind a finalized contract when their agent acts in an undisclosed dual capacity. This case tests a specific nuance. Can the contract be broken if the vendor, Lintros, did not directly participate in the agent's deception? To find the answer, the court had to look past the commercial contract and examine the bedrock equitable duties that bind agents to their clients. The court's focus shifted from the specific events of the sale to the overarching principles of agency law and equity. Now, this brings us to the rule. Fiduciary duty establishes a strict obligation of undivided loyalty. The agent must act solely in the interest of the principal who retained them. This leads to a fundamental legal axiom: an agent cannot serve two principals with opposing interests at the same time. Dual agency is permissible only when the agent obtains explicit, fully informed consent from both parties. If this rule is violated, any transaction resulting from that undisclosed conflict becomes voidable at the election of the uninformed party. Equity views undisclosed divided loyalty as a corruption of the agency relationship itself, rendering the resulting transaction illegitimate. We can now apply this baseline rule to the specific conduct of John Hopkins & Company. This is the application phase of the IRAC process. The agent owed a fiduciary duty to Lintros, which required them to seek the highest possible price for the property. Simultaneously, the agent owed a duty to King to provide unbiased, critical advice that might include highlighting why the property was a poor investment. These two obligations create a functional paradox. An agent cannot provide objective advice to a buyer while contractually bound to maximize value for the seller. By failing to disclose the conflict, the agent removed King's ability to evaluate the bias inherent in the advice he was receiving. The two duties eventually collide, causing the legal relationship to fail as the obligations become mutually exclusive. Hopkins' dual representation constituted a functional breach of fiduciary duty the moment the advice reached King, regardless of how the conflict appeared on paper. Lintros argued for the contract's validity, claiming they were unaware of the agent's second client and had done nothing wrong themselves. However, agency law dictates that a principal is responsible for the environment and actions their agent takes within the scope of their employment. King only signed the contract because he received biased advice from an agent who was supposed to be looking out for him. This creates what is known as equitable infection. Because Lintros utilized a compromised agent to obtain King's signature, the resulting contract is tainted by that agent's conflict. Equity prioritizes the purity of fiduciary loyalty over the finality of a commercial deal. If the foundation of the agreement is conflicted, the agreement itself cannot stand. In the eyes of the law, a signature obtained through a hidden conflict of interest holds no more weight than one obtained through direct coercion. The court finally turned to the ultimate judicial resolution for the dispute between Lintros and King, and this brings us to the conclusion. The court ruled in favor of King, confirming his right to abandon the purchase and walk away from the transaction. To achieve this, the court applied the equitable remedy of rescission. Rescission retroactively unwinds the agreement, restoring both parties to their original positions as if the contract never legally existed. By nullifying the sale, the court effectively penalized Lintros to protect the integrity of the fiduciary relationship. The decision proved that equity has the power to dismantle even the most formalized commercial deals when they are built on conflicted foundations. Looking back, we see a clear logical chain. The issue began with undisclosed dual agency. The rule required absolute, undivided loyalty. Application showed the agent's conflicting duties tainted the contract. The conclusion? The contract must be rescinded to satisfy equity. Disclosure serves as the strict structural prerequisite for any legal dual agency to exist. Without informed consent, a fiduciary breach acts as a systemic virus that will inevitably collapse the commercial transaction the agent was hired to secure.